Arkansas hasn't lost since they were here. They haven't necessarily changed their plays. They've changed how they're playing their personnel. They've been tremendous on the glass, a lot faster at home than they are on the road, and they're a top 20 team in regards to tempo. Playing multiple guys that put pressure on the rim off the bounce, multiple guys that put pressure on the rim on the glass. They had 20 offensive rebounds here that were 20 points by 9 different guys, and they're rebounding the ball at an even higher clip over the last 3 games. Obviously, they beat Missouri before we played them, beat South Carolina earlier this week, and then won at LSU, and have been dominant on the glass. And a lot of that, I think, is because of how their personnel has changed.
Before they came here, you were talking about you thought that they were a top 20 caliber team anyway. So I guess there's no surprise to you that they've been able
I think
to
it was, I think 3 weeks before we played them, they were ranked 10th in the country. And their rotation now, in comparison to when they were top 10, has shortened, and you can easily see the priority that they're trying to play with, particularly offensively. 41% of their shots have been in transition. That's a really high number. And then they're almost Kentucky-like in regards to offensive rebounds. It's not 2 guys like it is against Kentucky. It's 4. They're sending 4 guys to the glass every time. And I think that's probably why they're doing what they're doing, and they're having a lot of success with it.
You usually follow these
Sure.
strategies.
What is kind of the strategy? What is your thought process on bringing Q off the bench, and what does he provide in that role?
I think it's just evolved into that. I don't think it was like a master plan. I wouldn't necessarily say that it started because of Q. I think it started because I knew what Q was. And I think there's comfort as a coach that when you sub, you know what you're getting. And for a team as inexperienced as we are, I like that I can turn to someone who has been wherever we are and at least has some level of wisdom of what's required. It doesn't mean that he's going to be perfect. I did it earlier in my tenure at Virginia Tech with another ball guard similar to Q, a little different reasoning behind it, but similar to what's happened with Q, it's just kind of gained a little traction in an unspoken way. The kids that have been starting, I think, have gained some traction. We changed, I think, the starting lineup in game 10. And then I think we made one more adjustment. I think those guys are doing better. I think Q gives us something different when he comes in. And the other thing that the public doesn't see is Q spends a lot of time in practice, so he gets reps with the most inexperienced guards on our team. And I think his leadership and stability has been healthy for those guys too.
Would it be correct to say that you're a guy with your philosophy that it's more telling who the 5 are at the end of a close game than maybe the 5 are that start the game?
Yeah, I know that's a coaching cliche, but I think early in my tenure as a head coach, it was I just want to play the 5 toughest guys, and I was a little immune to like media coverage or exposure. Like I didn't even really know what was going on in that regard. And I think that's kind of what started the small ball stuff. Our second year at Marquette, we were picked preseason 13th, and we started a 6'5" kid at the 5 and kind of developed this new, we call it around the horn, we still call it around the horn. And I think we went 12-6, went to the NCAA tournament. And I think for me as a coach, it was liberating to some degree, like, let's do us and what fits us best, irregardless of the opponent. And Q's going to play. And I don't know, I know he fouled out, was that 2 games ago? And I think that was his first foul out. Q's going to play, and Q's going to play the same minutes of whether he started or not. But I think the residual benefit of what he gives in practice and the stability that he brings to our team on game day, I don't know how you quantify that, but it's been really important for us. Even if you think about, sorry to keep talking, if you think about those 3 games in Vegas, pick any of them. Pick Notre Dame, and they're smashing us. Hey, Q, you got to go. And then now, to some degree, the other 4 guys rotated around him to close down the last 25-ish minutes of the game. And there's been other times where, whether you're a starter or you're coming off the bench, Q's probably staying through a circuit of that, regardless of who he's with. And that's what you want from a guy that's been in your program. That's what you want on a daily basis. But it also, at least you know one thing that you know that you're going to get. And with a team as inexperienced as ours is, that's been really good. But it wasn't a grand plan, and it's never even been discussed in a staff meeting. I've never had, like, kumbaya meetings with Q. Like, it's nothing. And I think I mentioned that to you before, too. Like, I think that speaks to who Q is more than anything.
What's it going to take? Because A&M, even before you got here, had trouble winning up in Arkansas. So what
Is that right?
Yeah. I think when you won there a couple of years ago, it was the first time in quite a while. So
We lost by 10. I've only played there once since I've been the head coach. And then when we were an assistant, when I was an assistant here, obviously they weren't in the league. But so that would have been up through a lot of coaches then, not just Texas A&M, but that would have been Mike Anderson's tenure, Eric Musselman's tenure. Who was the coach
all the way
before?
back to Sutton, man.
Yeah, I would say back to Coach Sutton. I was trying to rewind. Who was before Mike Anderson? Oh, John Pelfrey for 4 years after South Alabama, because Dana Altman took the job, had the press conference, and left that afternoon. And then before John Pelfrey was Coach Richardson.
So, what does it take, do you think, to win up there?
It's an incredible environment. Like, as far as college basketball, I've never been there for a football game, but I think when you think of a college town playing in a high major league, Saturday afternoons, it's a priority, whether it's the fall or the winter, and you feel that. Like I said, when we played there year one, it was game 1 for us. And it was a tie ball game with 6 minutes and 16 seconds left. And this sounds like a loser, but when we got on the bus, that was when I believe that what we were doing on a daily basis began to turn. Like, our guys, I think Josh Nebo began to believe in it. Chuck Mitchell believed in it from the very beginning. But when we left Fayetteville, I think that there was, despite the loss, I think there was some growth in the program of what we were trying to do. But the ambiance and their players, I think Coach Muss has had more transfers in his, I think this is his 7th year as a head coach. He's had more transfers than any head coach percentage-wise in any sport. He's done a phenomenal job, and this year's no exception when you look at the guys that are playing the most minutes for them, the way they go about. He was doing it before the portal. He was doing it the old school way where you sign them and they sit out. And to some degree, you could say that's why he's the head coach at Arkansas, because he was so ahead of the game and how he was constructing his roster at Nevada.
How much confidence can you glean from that win 2 weeks ago, or does it all that just get thrown out the window now?
Well, I think there is something about a mirror opponent. You know, you have 5 of them, so there's at least 5 times a year when you do a scouting report and prep, you have some footage of what happened recently. Obviously, we played them 2 weeks ago. The thing I think is, I do think that there's some strategy and some stuff that goes into that, how they attacked what we were trying to do the first time, and what will our counter be to that. And I think, just like we do, they have a plan for new things, but this would be our first mirror, second, or however you want to say it, our first home and home with our first mirror opponent. Their team is different than 2 weeks ago. They had 9 guys get offensive rebounds against us. They haven't played 9 guys since then. So they had 9 that had a stat against us, and they're playing 6 guys, 175 minutes, and then the other 25 minutes go to 1.5 other guys. And so they're, after starting 0-3, if you looked at them and studied them, and then if you looked at them since going 3-0, there are people on the scouting report the second time that are not even on the report the first time. And then how they're going about winning is different as well.
Yeah, play really good defense now.
Oh, they're a really good. I mean, if you're in the top 20 in November and you're in the top 20 in December to close out the fall semester, you're a really good team.
And I wanted to ask you, obviously your guys know they have to shoot better than they did against Kentucky. Is that something that you even have to talk about with them, with the team, or is it like maybe in baseball, if somebody's in a slump, it's just kind of leave them alone?
I tell them they have to make free throws.
Okay.
We talk about that. We're transparent about that. I think we were first in the league in three-point field goal percentage going into the game. And as I mentioned to you or Travis, whichever asked the question, maybe there were 1 or 2 shots that you would look at in I think we had 68 possessions against Kentucky that you would look at and go, I don't know if that was a great shot. But it wasn't like we were taking repeated bad shots. Four was shooting the balls he typically shoots. Haas was. Q was 0 of 5. He was shooting the shots he typically shoots. So, yeah, I don't back away from what the truth is. In defense of our players, they don't either. You can't shoot 4% from 3 and 39% from the free throw line and beat Central Arkansas or any other opponent we've had. But I will say this, but if you only lose by 6 and you were fouling the last minute to push it to 6, you must have done a lot of really good things against a team that's good enough to win the national championship.
Yeah, so you've talked a little bit about some changes Arkansas's had and some of their growth. What growth have you seen from your own team in the past 2 weeks?
Yeah, good point, and we've talked about that. We actually showed clips yesterday. There's kind of a rhythm to how we present an opponent for the first time and a little bit of a change in rhythm when we present the opponent the second time. And one of those things is this is what they were then, game 1, and this is what they are now, game 2. And then we do the same thing for us. Because you want your team to have a crescendo in improvement on both sides of the ball. And It was game 2 when we played them, and this will be game 6. But I think what is not accounted for are the practices in addition to the games since the last time you played them. I think for normal people like my wife and my children, like if you say 10 or 12 days to them, it's like that's what they think vacation should be. I mean, you say 10 or 12 days to somebody that comes in here 16 or 17 hours a day, it's like 10 or 12 days is an eternity. I think we're a lot better, to be frank with you. I think we play a little harder. I think we play for one another more. I think we're more connected in executing what we're trying to accomplish. Some of the priorities that we have defensively, we were as good as we have been all year long on Wednesday. And so then the standard doesn't change, but the accountability of we've seen you do this, and now you need to do it at that rate over and over. That's how teams improve. And I think the one thing that is different in the league this year and last year, I know Coach Cal calls it a throwaway year, but last year was so unique because there wasn't a rhythm. But from year 1, since we were here to now, you used to could play okay and still win a game in this league in year number 1 that I was here. I don't think you can play okay in this league in year number 3 and beat anybody. We don't score the first 8 minutes and 53 seconds at Missouri and win by 3, 67-64. So we scored 67 points in 31 minutes. And they were ahead 3 days later at Ole Miss by 30 and ended up winning by 25. And I think that's where the power of the league has changed. You may not can win and just play good. Like, good may not be good enough to win every night. And I think that's why the league is improving.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys.